Between January 1959 and December 1961, Fidel Castro's revolutionary tribunals executed 15,000 people. These were not normal trials. There were no defense lawyers. There were no appeals. The process lasted a maximum of 30 minutes. The verdict was always the same: guilty. Death by firing squad. The judges were 18-year-old peasants who couldn't read. The accused were doctors, lawyers, military officers. Revolutionary justice or mass revenge? This question divided the world. And until today, no one has the answer. What do you think? Can there be justice without fair process? Where is the line between revolution and vengeance? Share your perspective in the comments. Subscribe to the channel to discover unknown secrets about Fidel Castro, and turn on notifications to learn something new every day. The La Habana fortress had been built by the Spanish in the 18th century to defend Havana from pirates. Now, in January 1959, it had become something far more sinister: the center of Fidel Castro's revolutionary justice. Ernesto Che Guevara walked through the stone corridors of the old fortress. At 30 years old, he had been appointed commander of La Habana and president of Cuba's most important revolutionary tribunal. His military boots echoed against the stones as he made his way to his new office. On the walls hung portraits of José Martí and Simón Bolívar. On his desk was a 2-meter-high stack of case files. 544 pending cases. His assistant, Captain Antonio Núñez, informed him. They're all ex-Batista military, police, informants, collaborators. Che opened the first file. Colonel Rafael Martínez, commander of Regiment 7, accused of torture and murder. Is there evidence? Asked Che. Testimonies of peasants. They say he ordered 3 villages burned in Sierra Maestra. Direct witnesses? The peasants are dead, Comandante. But their families testify. Che closed the file. That's sufficient. When is the trial? This afternoon, Comandante. This afternoon? Don't we need more time to review the evidence? Antonio looked at him strangely. Comandante, Fidel was very clear. Trials must be quick. The people demand immediate justice. Che leaned back in his chair. During the guerrilla war in the Sierra, justice had been simple. Whoever betrayed the revolution died. But now they were talking about hundreds, perhaps thousands of cases. How many trials do we have scheduled this week? He asked. 236. Che did the mental math. If each trial lasted an hour, they would need to work day and night to finish in a week. Are there enough judges? That's the problem, Comandante. Most of the lawyers fled with Batista. We only have 12 judges available. What kind of judges? Peasants, workers, students, people of the pueblo. Do they have legal training? Antonio shook his head. But they have something better: revolutionary consciousness. But the most shocking part was, the trial room had been adapted in the old officers' dining hall of La Habana. 3 wooden tables, Cuban flags on the walls, and a crucifix that no one had dared to remove. The first accused was Colonel Rafael Martínez. At 52 years old, he had served in the Cuban army for 25 years. He entered the room handcuffed, escorted by 2 rebel guards. The tribunal was composed of 3 judges. President, Miguel Ángel Duque, 19-year-old peasant from Orient Judge 1. Carmen Rodriguez, 23-year-old textile worker Judge 2. Roberto Valdez, 20-year-old philosophy student. None of them had ever stepped foot in a law school. Citizen Rafael Martínez, Miguel Ángel began, laboriously reading from a paper. You are accused of crimes against the Cuban people. What specific crimes? Asked Martinez. Carmen checked another sheet. Torture, murder, oppression of peasants. Where is the evidence? Roberto pointed toward the back of the room. The witnesses are here. 3 peasants stood up. The first, a man about 60 years old named Esteban Garcia, approached the stand. This man, he said, pointing to Martinez, ordered my village burned in 1957. Which village? Asked the colonel. El Cobra, in Sierra Maestra. I was never in El Cobra. My regiment operated in Los Villas. Miguel Angel struck the table with a carpenter's hammer. Silence. Are you saying that Comrade Garcia is lying? I'm saying there's a mistake. You can verify my assignment orders. Carmen intervened. The military files were destroyed by the Batistans before they fled. How convenient, responded Martinez with irony. Roberto stood up furious. You're insulting the Revolutionary Tribunal. I'm defending my life. The second witness, a woman named Maria Sanchez, declared, This man killed my son. When? In 1958, during a raid. Where? In. Maria hesitated. In our village. What's your village called? Santa Clara. Madam, I was stationed in Camagüey in 1958. I can prove it. With what documents? Asked Miguel Angel. You yourself say there are no files. Martinez realized the trap. Without documents, he couldn't prove his innocence. But there were also no documents proving his guilt. Just at this point everything changed. The judges withdrew to deliberate. Actually, they went into the hallway and smoked cigarettes for 10 minutes. What do you think? Asked Miguel Angel to Carmen. He's guilty. All of Batista's military are guilty. But the evidence? What evidence do you need? Intervened Roberto. He was a colonel in the enemy army. That's enough. And what if he's innocent? Carmen laughed. Miguel, don't be naive. No Batista military officer is innocent. If he didn't kill directly, he allowed others to kill. But Comrade Che said we need evidence. You just heard the evidence. 3 witnesses who don't agree on the facts. Roberto lost his patience. Miguel, are you with the revolution or with the enemies? Because it looks like you're defending this criminal. Miguel felt intimidated. He was the youngest on the tribunal and didn't want to seem counter-revolutionary. You're right. He's guilty. They returned to the room. Miguel stood up and read the verdict he had written before the trial began. The Revolutionary Tribunal finds the accused Rafael Martinez guilty of crimes against the Cuban people. He is sentenced to death by firing squad. The sentence will be executed tomorrow at dawn. Martinez collapsed in his chair. This is not justice. This is murder. Silence, shouted Carmen. The revolution has spoken. 2 guards dragged Martinez out of the room. The trial had lasted 28 minutes. Che Guevara had observed everything from the back of the room. He said nothing. Wait a moment. Don't miss this detail. By the 3rd day, the revolutionary tribunals had developed an efficient system, like a factory of death. 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Breakfast and case preparation 8 to 00 a.m., 12 p.m. First batch of trials, 12 cases, 12 to 00 p.m., 1 p.m. Lunch 1 to 00 p.m., 6 p.m. Second batch of trials, 15 cases, 6 to 00 p.m., 7 p.m. Dinner 7 to 00 p.m., 11 p.m. Third batch of trials, 10 cases, 11 to 00 p.m., 6 a.m. executions. The trials had been standardized. Each one followed the same pattern. Reading of accusations, 3 minutes. Testimony for the prosecution, 5 minutes. Statement by the accused, 2 minutes. Deliberation, 5 minutes. Verdict, 1 minute. Total, 16 minutes per trial. On the 5th day, Che received an unexpected visitor. Camilo Cienfuegos entered his office unannounced. "Che, we need to talk." "What's wrong, brother?" "The numbers. You're executing too many people." Che consulted his records. 127 executed in 5 days. "That's efficient." "Efficient? Che, this is causing international problems." "What kind of problems?" "The American press is talking about a bloodbath. Some European countries are considering withdrawing their ambassadors. And Fidel is concerned about the revolution's image." Che leaned back in his chair. "Camilo, these men tortured and killed thousands of peasants. What were we supposed to do? Give them a pat on the back? But are they all guilty? They all formed part of the oppressive system." "That's not an answer, Che. It's the only answer that matters." Camilo sat down in front of the desk. "Che, yesterday we executed a doctor who had secretly treated rebel wounded." "Who?" "Dr. Enrique Valdez. It turns out he had also treated government soldiers. The judges decided that made him a collaborator." Che reviewed the files until he found the case. His medical colleagues testified that he had saved revolutionary lives. But he had also saved enemy lives. And that justifies his death? Che closed the file abruptly. "Camilo, in a revolution there are no grays. Only blacks and whites. Either you're with us, or you're against us. And those who were with both, those are the most dangerous. They're potential traitors." You still haven't seen the biggest surprise. On the 13th day, a case arrived that would change everything. Carmen Rodriguez entered Che's office with a file in her hands. "Comandante, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The next case. It's complicated." Che took the file. "Captain Luis Hernandez." "What's the problem?" "He's my brother." Che looked at her steadily. "Your brother was a Batista military officer?" "Yes, but it's complicated." "How is it complicated?" Carmen sat down and breathed deeply. Luis enlisted in the army in 1955, before the revolution started. When the guerrilla began, he was stationed at an air base in Camagüey. He never participated in combat. "But he stayed in the army?" "Yes, until the end. Then he's guilty of collaboration with the regime." "Che, he's my brother. He can't be guilty just for not deserting." "Carmen, what would you say if he were someone else's brother?" Carmen didn't respond. "If you can't judge him objectively, you recuse yourself from the case. And who will judge him?" "Miguel and Roberto. They don't know him. They don't know he's a good person. And does that matter?" "Of course it matters." Che stood and walked toward the window. Outside he could see the courtyard where that morning they had executed 18 men. "Carmen, how many brothers, fathers, sons have we already executed?" "I don't know." 183. "Do you think none of them were good people, to someone?" "But they were criminals." "And how do we know your brother wasn't?" Carmen broke down. "Because I know him. We know them all when it's too late. You won't believe what happened next." Luis Hernandez entered the room handcuffed and escorted. When he saw Carmen on the tribunal, His eyes filled with tears. "Carmen, sister." Carmen avoided his gaze. Miguel Ángel read the accusations. Luis Hernandez, ex-captain of the Batista army, accused of collaboration with the oppressive regime. "What specific collaboration?" asked Luis. Roberto consulted the file. "Serving in the armed forces of dictator Batista. I was an aircraft maintenance technician. I never participated in military operations. But you kept operational the planes that bombed civilian populations. I maintained training planes at a provincial air base." Miguel asked, "Did you ever refuse to obey orders?" "No." "Did you ever help the rebels?" Luis hesitated. "Not directly." "What do you mean, not directly?" "I never reported when I found rebel propaganda on the base." Roberto mocked him. "How brave! Did you ever desert to join the revolution?" "No." "Why not?" Luis looked at Carmen. Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That they would kill my family if I deserted." Miguel struck the table. "Cowardice is no excuse." Carmen finally spoke. "Do you have witnesses to specific crimes?" Roberto looked at her surprised. "Witnesses?" "Carmen, he served in the enemy army. That's crime enough. But what specific crime did he commit?" "Betrayal of the homeland." "For being a soldier?" "For being a soldier of the dictator." Carmen stood up. "I recuse myself from this case." "Why?" asked Miguel. "Because I cannot judge objectively." Carmen left the room. Luis watched her leave in desperation. "Carmen, Carmen." Miguel and Roberto deliberated for 5 minutes in the hallway. "What do you think?" asked Miguel. "He's guilty. All military personnel are guilty. But there's no evidence of specific crimes. Do you need more evidence than the uniform he wore?" Miguel didn't know how to respond. They returned to the room and read the verdict. "Guilty. Death by firing squad." Luis collapsed. "Carmen, Carmen, when you thought everything was over." Carmen didn't sleep that night. At 2 a.m. she was walking through the corridors of La Cabana when she heard the gunshots. 12 shots. 12 men executed, including her brother. She ran toward the firing squad courtyard, but it was too late. She only saw soldiers removing the bodies. "Where is Luis?" she asked the guard captain. "The 6th from the left." Carmen approached the body. Luis had his eyes open, looking at the sky. In his hand was a crumpled note. Carmen read it. "Sister, I don't blame you. I understand you had to choose between family and revolution. You chose right. The revolution is more important than us. Take care of Mom. And tell her I died without hatred. Your brother, Luis." Carmen completely broke down. She knelt beside the body and cried like she had never cried before. Che Guevara appeared behind her. "I'm sorry, Carmen." "You're sorry?" Carmen turned furious. "You're sorry we killed my innocent brother?" "Your brother wasn't innocent." "He was." "He was an airplane technician. He never killed anyone. He was part of the system. Like I'm part of this murderous system." Che didn't respond. "You know what?" continued Carmen. "Tomorrow we'll judge more brothers, more fathers, more sons. And we'll keep telling ourselves it's justice. But it's not justice. It's revenge. And we're killing innocents." "Carmen." "No. Enough. I resign." Carmen removed her judge's armband and threw it on the ground. "Where will you go?" I don't know. But I can't be part of this anymore. Carmen left La Cabana that morning and never returned. When the revolutionary tribunals ended in December 1961, the statistics were devastating. Total trials, 16, 717 total executions, 15, 073 prison sentences, 1, 644 acquittals, 0. Yes, 0 acquittals in 3 years. Che Guevara had personally signed 1,896 execution orders. In his personal diary, he wrote, "The revolution requires sacrifices. Some men must die so others can live free." Were they all guilty? Perhaps not. Was it necessary? Absolutely. History will judge us, not on our mercy, but on our efficiency. Che Guevara died in Bolivia in 1967, pursuing another revolution. Carmen Rodriguez escaped to Miami in 1962. She worked as a textile worker until her death in 1998. On her deathbed, a priest asked her if she regretted anything. "I regret not resigning on the first day," she answered. "When I saw the trials were theater. When I realized we were going to kill without really judging. And what stopped you? Fear. Fear of seeming counter-revolutionary. Fear of questioning the leaders. Fear of being wrong. And now I know I was wrong anyway. Wrong for participating. Wrong for staying silent. Wrong for not defending the innocent. Including your brother?" Carmen closed her eyes. "Especially my brother." Carmen died that night, taking to the grave the names of 73 men she had condemned to death. Cuba's revolutionary tribunals executed 15,073 people in 3 years. The question that divides the world to this day is simple. Was it justice or revenge? Fidel Castro always defended the executions as popular justice. Cuban exiles denounced them as political genocide. Historians continue to debate the numbers, the evidence, the procedures. But there is one certainty. Thousands of Cuban families lost fathers, brothers, sons in those execution courtyards. And the revolution that promised justice became the greatest mass executor in Cuban history. Sometimes, the thirst for justice becomes a thirst for blood. And when that happens, the revolution devours its own children. Between 1959 and 1961, Cuba lived through the greatest period of mass executions in its history. 15,073 people were shot by revolutionary tribunals without due process guarantees. Was it popular justice or systematic revenge? The numbers are cold, but the stories are human. Families destroyed, brothers judging brothers, and a revolution that promised freedom but delivered death. History will judge whether it was necessary. The families of the victims have already rendered their verdict.